Hello everyone, I'm going to show you how to solve Leetcode question 128, longest consecutive sequence. So given an array of unsorted array of integers of nums, return the length of the longest consecutive element in the sequence. You must write an algorithm that return in O(n) time. Like if you look at the numbers here, it gives you different numbers, and the longest output consecutive element sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So then that's why it returned the length is 4. And the second example, it gives you nums here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until 8. So there's 9 is the max length of the consecutive sequence. And here are some constraints here. And if you look at here, it was asked by a bunch of companies in the last 6 months. Definitely a question you need to know how to do. If you look at this output here, of course, you can brute force it, basically check every single number and calculate it, but the algorithm is not as efficient because it asks you to return this in O(n) time. The other alternative is that you can also sort this array and just sort it to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 100, and then 200, and then you can run the same thing and check every single number and update the longest length. In this case, the most efficient way is actually you put all these numbers in a set. You put all these numbers in a set, and then what you're gonna do is you check every single number. Let's say we start with 100, number 100, right? When we check the 100, how do we know if it's our beginning of a new sequence? It's that we check if is there any 99 there. 99 is not there. When the n-1 does not exist in the set, that means that we know this is a beginning of a new sequence. So in that case, once we know that it's a new sequence, we want to start counting. So the length is 1 right now. We want to also keep track of the current length, and then we want to update the longest length with the longest length and the current length, whichever is the biggest, so that we can get the longest length in the end. And then once we check the 100, the current length is 1, right? And then we want to continue to go on to check the next sequence. What we wanted to check is see 101 is there, but 101 is not there, right? So then that's it for the sequence. So the current length is 1 in this case, right? Then we want to go on to check 4. Does 3 exist in the sequence? Yes, it does. So then we don't want to check it because we don't want to put 4 as a beginning of a sequence because 3 exists, so it's not a beginning of a sequence. So then we go on to check 200, right? Is 199 exist? It does not. So 200 is the beginning of a new sequence. So when we check 200, we set the current length to 1, right? And then we're gonna go on to check 201 in this case, and the 201 does not exist. So for this sequence, the length is 1. So we want to move on to the next one, which is 1 in this case. Does 0 exist? 0 does not exist. So that we know the 1 is a beginning of another sequence, right? So then we want to set the length to 1. And then we want to continue to check if 2 exists to n exist in the set, right? And then 2 exists. Is 3 exist? Yeah, 3 exists. Is 4 exist? 4 exists. Does 5 exist? 5 does not exist. So that we know 1, 2, 3, 4. So we keep track of the current length. Every time we check one number, we also update the length. So then we update the length to the 4 right now. And then since we give it our a longest is the max, we want to update the longest with the longest and also the the length, right? Whichever is the biggest. So then in this case, we want to return the longest as 4 in this case, if that makes sense. Basically, that's how the thought process is, and the time complexity is O n time as it required if using our set. And I'm going to show you how to do this in code. And the longest, I want to set the longest to 0 at the beginning, and the longest is the output that we want to return. You can also call any other name that you like. And I'm going to create a n set. So basically put all the nums into the set for, I'm calling it n set. So for every single number in n set, I'm going to check every single number in this n set like we discussed earlier in the thought process. So if, I have to say that if when we check 100, right, if 99 does not exist in this set, then I'm going to start, that means it's a new start, beginning of a new sequence. Then I'm going to start counting the numbers. So the requirement is n minus 1, not in n set. So if n minus 1 is not, then I'm going to set the current length to 1, because 100 is one length, right? And then when that is the case, I'm going to go on to check 101. So basically n plus 1. I'm using while is because I'm not only needing to check 101, I also need to continue to go on to check 102, 103, right? So if n1 plus 1 in n set, what I'm going to do is every time when I check n, I'm going to increase n by 1, right? Because I'm checking if n1 is in the set and I'm updating 100 to 101. I'm checking 101, 102 until the n plus 1 is not in the n set. So while I'm updating the n, checking the n number, I also wanted to make sure I do update the current length. The current length is also needs to be increased 1 each time when I increase the n, right? So then I can get the longest length for this sequence. So when I break out the while loop is this, there's no longer any other number after 4. Like for example, I already checked 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And the n plus 1, 5 does not exist anymore. So at that time, I want to update the longest result. And I'm going to say the longest result is whatever is the biggest, is one is the longest or the current length. So whichever one is the biggest, like the length, the longest, when we first check 100, right? The length is 1, we update the longest to 1, and then we check 200 is also 1, not updating it, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 is 4, then we update the longest to 4 in this case. So after checking every single number in the set, I want to return the longest. That's basically the result that I'm looking for. If you think that this is helpful, please give me a thumbs up, like my video, and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you soon with more Leetcode questions. Bye bye.